Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stickity Stacks in this thing, baby, representing Team Kings of Games. Let me slide my shit all out the way. So today I'm gonna be updating Virtual Worlds, but this time, it's more or less like this is Virtual Worlds post ban list. I am pretty much siding with a lot of people who agree that True King of all Chlamydia is probably gonna be banned. If he doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, if he does get banned, I wouldn't be surprised either. It's just you never know with Konami. So I have an updated list. The only thing that really changes is the extra deck. The main deck is pretty much the same, except I'm playing Skill Drain now because VFD is banned, and that's like the next best thing when you lose your VFD. I will say this deck is pretty much, I feel like it's the best deck. Even though I'm very biased towards ritual decks, and I love that Drytron is pretty much like a somewhat ritual mechanic based deck, and I would normally side with that deck, but I just can't deny how good Virtual World is. I think this deck's biggest weakness is obviously itself. This deck is not the most consistent in the world, but for some reason, it finds a way to pull out the stops. It's able to play through multiple interruptions. It's really, really skillful, and I think that's what I like more about this deck than like Drytron. This deck can do more than what Drytron can do. This deck has a bigger toolbox, more options. And it's a lot more versatile, and it also is way better, I think, pushing through interruptions with the right hand. I think Drytron's just more consistent, but both the decks are really powerful. I think they're both tier 1, but I do think moving forward, even after VFD gets banned, that Virtual World's still going to be the best deck. This deck is just really, really good. I just love it. It's such a skill-based deck, and I love those kind of decks where you can't just be brain dead with it and win. You have to really, really plan it out before you start slapping your cardboard on the table, because you can mess up really easy. But let's go ahead and get into the list. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the Virtual World names. So we're playing 3 copies of Lulu. Lulu is like literally insane, you guys. Next to Lulu, I think Lily is the second strongest starter for their names, because Lily does give you double foolish, and that is actually really, really good because when you're not targeting a trap, when you're able to send Jean Wu and you're able to send something else, it can set you up, including the 2-card combo, which I actually learned off of a video I watched. Lily targeting Quinlong is actually a 2-card combo that gets you a lot of interruptions. Now, it's not a 2-card VFD anymore, double VFD, because VFD's banned, but it's still a 2-card combination that can get you hand loops. It can set you up for Crystal Wing and Zoken, all kinds of nutty shenanigans. So Lily is still arguably the second strongest starter. And then next up we have Gigi. Honestly, Gigi kind of is like my favorite, right? Because I'm very big on follow-ups, and this is arguably the best follow-up. It's better than Quinlong Engrave, because Quinlong Engrave always means that if you're ending with nothing, that means your next top deck has to be discarded for Quinlong. You know what I mean? I like Gigi a lot because of being able to add Lao Lao and Lulu for your follow-ups. Just insane. This card is really, really good. Gigi is arguably my favorite because it kind of just rotates into any name you want it to be. It's just for your follow-up, so it's almost just as good as all the other names, but better for me because I'm very big on follow-ups. I hate playing decks that just can't play past their turn 1 board. Like the traditional Dragon Link that was ending on the Buster Lock, they would have like Boral Sword left in their extra deck, and their follow-ups were safer for Levianeer. That was dookie. Now they're playing like Dragon Main cards, so like, I think their follow-ups are a lot better, but before it was just like all in and one and done. And then next up, we're obviously maxing out on Lao Lao. Lao Lao is just insane. This is like the last name you want to reveal. Typically, a trick that I could teach you guys if you don't do this is when you play Virtual Worlds and you draw multiple names, you want to use the worst name in your hand first, because it makes your hand look suboptimal. It means like if I draw Gigi Lulu, I'm actually going to reveal Gigi first on purpose, because if I had Lulu in their mind, I would have revealed it. But it's reverse psychology, if that makes sense. And most people will throw the Ash there because they're just thinking that you're working with a poor hand, and then you could reveal Lulu after, which is really cool. And this also conveniently, will help you to get the Ash out of their hand or their Ghost Bill or whatever. So it's just something that I like to do, like anytime I draw 2 names. But if I draw Lao Lao plus another name, I don't like to reveal Lao Lao first. I'm not gonna lie, that's the only time I don't do that. But like if I draw like Gigi and Lily, I'll reveal Gigi first. If it's Lulu plus Lily, I reveal Lily first, and vice versa. I normally save the best for last, and that's what you're supposed to do. And then this might seem crazy to you, but I'm actually playing only 2 Nyans. I'm not playing Desires on my list anymore, so there's no fear of ever running out of Nyanyans, and this card is pretty nice. I'm actually playing Prosperity in my list. Obviously, I'm proxying Desires for the Prosperity, but I think Prosperity is better. I know some people play both. But I personally would rather play a lot more hand traps, and I know it's like a consistency factor that comes down to it, but at the end of the day, you can't resolve both in the same turn anyways, and even though playing both Desires and Prosperity increases your chances of drawing into them, I also play 3 Foolish Burial Goods, you know what I mean? So I actually wanted to play at least 9 hand traps. I feel like 9 is a really good number for this list. So I'm actually playing 2 Nian. I am not playing 2-2 because I don't really like 2-2. I was just going to play 2 Nian and a 2-2 because it's another name. You can normally pitch and just summon it, but I've never really comboed with 2-2. And there's no like real viable way to use 2-2 where she actually like benefits you. She's super duper niche. She's not like great, you know what I mean? She's very average. This deck can do everything it's supposed to do without 2-2. I think Zhang Wu is the only of the newer support that this deck's got. Cards, where's Zhang Wu at? I think this is the only one that's mandatory is Zhang Wu. You can get away with not playing 2-2. I personally just don't like 2-2. I've tested with it and it just does not, it's just useless. Not like totally useless, but it doesn't really solve any problems that the deck already had in the first place, if that makes sense. It's just another name, but honestly, you have enough normal summons already. I really like Nian, though, because this card is just insane. And it makes Prosperity a lot more, I guess you could say a lot less convoluted, because with Prosperity now, it's like you can just banish random cards that you might not need now, but later on in the duel, when you need them, you'll always be able to shuffle them back with Nian anyway, so you'll see those cards regardless. So this makes Prosperity pretty insane. Next up, I'll go ahead and get into my consistency cards. So outside of opening virtual world names, the next best thing you want to draw into is any of your spells, because all the spells in this deck are gas except for Called By. So we're on 3 Prosperity. I know it's Desires, but it's supposed to be Prosperity. I did pull 1 Prosperity, but obviously I moved that, you know, because a brother trying to eat out here. 3 Proxy Prosperities, and then we have 3 Kowloon. One thing I will say that I always have like admired about this deck ever since it came out is its main deck is built to go first or second. Kowloon and cards like Quinlong and Chuchi, and the fact that you could activate Chuchi directly from your deck with a card like this make going second a lot easier, and the fact that you can easily put up a Bamboozling or summon a card like, let me go down to it, like Juju, like just for free before you even get deeper into your combo. This deck is really good at dismantling boards and making boards at the same time. I like this. Back when the Buster Blader deck was popular, this was like your main deck out to the Buster Blader lock, because you would just negate the fusion. That was like a skill drain, essentially. This was your out to Winda when they only put up 1 Winda off Schism. This card is just super duper good. It's a good tool. If like Zodiac doesn't respect your matchup and they make Ram with the like Azu with Ram as a material, obviously you can force the Dryden out or just negate it pretty much. This card just solves so many problems. And also what's cool, what I want to talk about is in the mirror match, the mind games that there are involved, because with VFD legal right now, technically speaking, I know this is like a future deck profile where VFD would be banned, but what I will say is in the mirror match, because most virtual world lists, I want to say almost every virtual world list plays Gamma, nobody ever shotguns VFD. So what happens is you can actually force your opponent to play into Gamma with Kowloon, because you can activate Quinlong and target VFD, and if they don't use it, they lose it. So they use it or lose it, and they lose it either way. If you have Gamma and they don't have Ash, you can force them to activate their VFD. And even if they wanted to just like be like, I don't know, chain Chuchi, pop, chain VFD, no matter what order or sequence, you can always chain Gamma to the VFD because you get to respond to it. So this also, Kowloon, helps you to force VFD out. And really, when you draw Kowloon plus Gamma, it disables 2 negations before you start revealing any virtual world names. So Kowloon is just insane. Like, this card is actually nuts. I really like it a lot. It also helps you to deal with floodgates. You know, whatever it is, Mystic Mine, Rivalry goes in. Chuchi is just disgusting. Like, it's Pot of Avarice and it's a pop, and you could pop literally your own cards too to combo. It's really nice. And then I also play 3 Foolish Burial Goods. I don't think that this is overkill. I think this is a good consistency card, especially with Zhang Wu being another good name to dump off goods. Goods can be an extender or a starter, whatever you need it to be. And it helps to unbreak your hand. If your hand was already good, you just discard it off of the Quinlong to resolve its effect. It's no biggie. And then 3 Quinlong. Quinlong is actually a really, really good name. This card's insane, you guys. Like, this card is just so good. It's so good. Like, out the windows, force the negate, out the Warlord Savage, force Seal to shotgun its effect immediately, like ASAP No Rocky. This card is so good. This card and City and cards like Gamma, and the fact that you can synchro into cards like Vermilion Mech and Juju and Coral Dragon and Interblapnir and Fanfan and Zeus and Fortune Tune. If you play that card, I don't have Fortune Tune or Zeus, but I would love to have them. It just makes this deck so well-rounded. That's why I also think that, again, it just reinforces my opinion that Virtual World pretty much is the best deck, because it doesn't necessarily have to win the dice roll to win. If you play against like normal combo decks that don't put up like VFD themselves, like let's say you play against Drytron and they end on their typical Vanity's Ruler with the Herald and the Eva in hand, you can just Quinlong the Vanity's Ruler and play through the Heralds. Which actually leads me to the next card, which is Called By. This is a really, really good card in this deck. It helps because the Heretic Seal in the Dragon Link matchup, or if you play against my Dragon Maid list, you can actually target the seal when they try to bounce your card when you were villain named to target. This card is just a really good utility card, and it's really good because Herald of the Orange Light in the Drytron matchup. This actually, if you open Called By plus a way to access Quinlong, you can out the Vanity's Ruler and deal with the Orange Lights in their hand, and they just have to use the other hand traps they have, and that's not enough to beat this deck. And then finally, we have Emergency Teleport. This card is insane. I really hope that it comes back to 3 one day. One day. And now getting into the hand traps. I'm actually on Triple Gamma. I think this is probably the best hand trap to play in this deck. The reason being is because a lot of the times people think the appropriate time to hand trap you is when you reveal a name. So when you reveal cards like Lulu and Lily and, you know, Lao Lao and so on and so forth, those cards can be either A, Ash Blossomed, or B, Ghost Belled. They can all be ashed, but Gigi and Lao Lao can also be Ghost Belled. And because you're revealing them and you have no monsters, it's the perfect opportunity to Gamma your opponent for trying to hand trap you. So for the simple fact that you main deck Gamma, it makes people play differently against you. So now, they're not going to shotgun Lancia, which means you can activate your Prosperity free, you know, willy-nilly. And if they ash or draw cards like Desires and Prosperity, if they try to negate your spell cards like Quinlong or Kowloon or City or anything with their monster negators or their omni negators like Borlo Savage, you can Gamma them. This also makes people not want to shotgun VFD right now in the meta. Ban list is not out, so VFD is still legal, and we don't know if he's actually going to be banned. We don't know. So this also makes people not commit to VFD in the draw phase. They wait for you to control a monster. And that's why also when you play against Virtual World, a lot of smart players will wait till you start summoning your VWs to then start hand trapping you. But that also makes it a lot easier for you to combo through those hand traps because they let you get a step ahead first before they drop the hand traps. So this hand trap is not only a good hand trap, but because it exists, people have to respect it. And by playing around it, they sometimes make very, very mediocre or suboptimal plays on purpose, even though you might not even have it. So Gamma's sheer existence, whether it's in your hand or not, makes people play around it. That's why this is arguably one of the best hand traps like ever, because this card is so skillful and people have to respect it or they get punished. It's so good. I play this in any deck that I can play it comfortably. Especially when I play decks that like lose to Drone Lockbird, when I'm activating so many cards to search and I still don't control a monster, Gamma is just insane. Like, this card is so good. And then next up, we also play Triple Ash Blossom. And then I think instead of main decking Nibiru, you should side it. I think Ghost Bell is really important because it's not even just about the mirror match. You want as many hand traps that are all going to be live to stop Drytron and Virtual World from playing in the first place. Nibiru is for when they already start playing. And now you're trying to either prevent the board from happening or simplify it as much as possible. But hand traps can prevent them from getting into the combo. Every Drytron name can be Ghost Belled because they can summon from hand or grave. So every one of them can be Ghost Belled. And Lulu and Lao Lao, Gigi and Lao Lao can be Ghost Belled. Every VW name can be Ash. And every Drytron and VW name can be Gamma. So I think these are the best hand traps to main deck in this deck. And then there's also the Shadol matchup. You don't always draw your Quinlong, so you don't always get the Alta Winda. So having Ghost Bell to negate the activation of Schism and make it hit the grave, I think Ghost Bell is really, really, really good right now. Like, it's super duper good. The card's just crazy. And Ash and Gamma are also really crazy against Tri-Brigades. A lot of the times, depending on what their hand is, you can just hold the Ash or Gamma until they go to some Morgue. The only time it differentiates is if they summon Appaloosa first, you know what I mean? But typically, if they have like a basic hand, like an average hand, they're just going to set up the Ancient Warrior Link, the Link Karibo, and the Samorg, and they're going to try to summon Barrier Statue, and that's where you could just Ash them and clap them. But at the same time, this deck actually can play through the Barrier Statue, not only because your main deck can summon wins, but because you can synchro into wins. Like Juju is a great card against that matchup, as well as Shin Shin. And also, Phantom Fortress Interblastonier, because you can summon Shin and you can summon Cloud Castle and you could still go into Phantom Fortress. So it's not the end of the world when you're up against a barrier statue, but it's just the fact that you have so many ways to deal with it. And then finishing up the main, I play 2 Chuchi. So what I like about not playing Desires anymore is it allows me to change the composition of my deck building and my main deck, so I don't have to play too many of the certain names that I wanted to because I was scared of banishing them off Desire. So now I can play 2 Chuchi, and I can play 2 Nian, and I can main more hand traps, and I can main my skill drain, which obviously I'm playing, and I can get away with it because I don't have to worry about playing 3 of this because it's not going to get banished. So if I ever hard draw one, that's perfect. I resolve Quinlong, discard it, and the second copy will just get searched off of my Lulu whenever I need to. I think this is perfect. And whenever you don't have these, Nian gets them back. So you have this loop where you just don't deck out with this deck. You never burn out of your resources. You can recycle your main deck, your extra deck. You can recycle your graveyard. You can recycle any pretty much any card in this deck because of how Nian works. And the way you can recycle your extra deck is like with using Shin to banish any of your cards that you summoned previously, and then you can use Nian to shuffle them back into your extra deck. And that includes when you banish your actual virtual world cards from your graveyard off of Shin and stuff like that. You can use Nian to recycle them. So you can actually recycle your entire extra deck and your main deck too, which is like super duper cool. Like there's a level of utility that this deck has that other decks don't actually have. The recursion in this deck is really good, and I like that this deck, it doesn't like necessarily like +1 and +2 and +3 and snowball, but it just has a really strong stability that's maintained. Every combo is self-sustaining and self-replacing in the sense that every turn you're going to set yourself up for your next turn, and I think that's very good. So obviously this deck's super solid. There's nothing really bad that can be said about Virtual World except that it has consistency issues, but I think I'm optimistic that if they've released one more Virtual World name that's just like Lala, Lulu, Gigi, etc., that reveals in Foolish Burials to summon, this deck would be insane. Like, because then you would have 15 names, 15 starters. But anyways, the extra, and if you guys didn't know, I'm actually playing the X-Saber Gotham's hand loop variant because I just want to play the most degenerate version to get the highest win results. Basically the highest ceiling, the best end results. I think that the hand loop variant is the next best thing compared to VFD, because if you want to be cute and end on like Crystal Wing and Dragoon and, you know, cards like Hot Red, cards like Forbidden Droplet and Dark Ruler become impactful when they were never supposed to be impactful against this deck. The only time Droplets was good is if you were sending a trap so they couldn't pop their own VFD. But now, since people might think that those cards are good against this deck, I think, again, the hand loop variant's incredible because if you have equalizers to break the board but no hand traps, I can just rip your hand apart and just end still on a negate. So we have Shin. We have Chao Fein. Chao Fein is disgusting. Against Adamanticators, they just can't win. So you can just summon this and sit on it, actually, and that's good enough. We have Vermilion. What I like about Vermilion and Chao Fein is they solve problems for consistency, and they also put pressure on your opponent at the same time. There are combos where you can use cards like Gigi or Lulu or Lily, just any name to Foolish Burial, a tuner that you need access to, and use Mech to pop itself to add it. That includes Foolishing Lao Lao off of a Gigi, or the 2-card combo off Lulu, Lily targeting Quinlong, where you can Foolish a Lulu and a Jianwu, summon it, make this pop, add Lulu back. It's really good. This card is an incredibly good utility card. Vermilion Mech is arguably one of the best synchros you could play in this deck, as well as Chao Fein being able to search any tuner via popping this card off of your Chuchi, which is really nice. And then my X-Saber Gothams, this is just a proxy for Gothams. So I can rip 4 cards. With an optimal hand, you can hand loop for 4. Leave your opponent with 2 cards, 1 in a top deck versus Chuchi and your hand traps. And if you open Insane, you can obviously just put up an interruption. You could just hand loop for 3 and put up an Omni Negate plus Chuchi. Sometimes that might be better. It depends. And then double Cloud Castle so that you can actually hand loop multiple times. You could still cut this and not play Gothams at all, and that gives you 3, technically 2, because I think you should still play at least 1 Cloud Castle, because there is a rank 9 that I think is worth playing. Even with VFD being legal, I still play it. But anyways, these are arguably cuttable, but I chose the hand loop variant, so that's why I'm playing these, the Cloud Castles and the Gothams. Next up, we're on Zulkin and Crystal Wing. Obviously, their Bamboozling is another option, but I think just the sheer like firepower that Crystal Wing has and its ability to counter cards like Dragoon so well. It's just another out to Dragoon now. This card is super duper strong. The pressure It's just Crystal Wing's just insane. And then Charge Warrior and Coral, I like both of these. I don't like to cut any of them. I think both of them are really, really good utility cards for certain situations. There are times when this actually does get to attack multiple times. And then we have, obviously, Juju. Juju's a beast. Like, this card is disgustingly good. It's super duper OP. And then we have the Sacred Tree Beast Hyperton, or Hyperion. I don't know how to pronounce it. So typically you just end on this with a spell under it to negate monsters and spells. You don't really worry too much about traps immediately. But you can get any material under it because Virtual Worlds can literally put spells or traps in grave, activate one of the appropriate effects, and then this card can add one of those from the grave to a material. So you can get this to be pretty much an Omni Negate. It's really, really good. I like this better, even though sometimes it's easier to make the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. I like this better because it negates anywhere. It doesn't have to target something on field. So this is always going to be a better negator. And then we have Interblathanier. This is not only for hand looping, but this card is actually insane. Like, it can banish from your deck, your hand, or your field, or your graveyard. It just vanishes anywhere, and it doesn't ever target. And then Fan is just disgusting. I don't have Zeus or Fortune Tune, so even if I did, I still would play Fan because, like I said, this card's disgusting. And obviously, Bamboozling is insane as well. It's just like your pseudo Crystal Wing until you get there. And that is the main deck. Side deck is pretty much gonna be based on, because like obviously there's no events, so your side deck's gonna be pretty much based on what your people are playing at your locals. You know, you don't always want to side for meta if people don't play it, but that's up to you guys. Let me know what you think about the build. You can always drop comments. I normally don't say this, but I have to get into habit to it. Please go ahead and do me a favor. Please go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. If you like the content and you want to stick around to see more videos, click the red notification bell, and every time I upload, you'll be notified, and you could be one of the first people to get in on the information that I provide for you. But God bless you guys. Jesus loves you, and peace.